The first sign that my life was about to implode came disguised as a hotel room key card tucked between my wife's lipstick and her birth control pills, like some twisted treasure hunt prize I never wanted to find. I'm Alex Reardon, 40 years old, and until 3 months ago, I thought I was living the American dream in Briarwood, Connecticut. You know the type of place: manicured lawns, Range Rovers in every driveway, and enough passive-aggressive neighborhood drama to fuel a Netflix series. I work in IT consulting, which means I fix rich people's computers and pretend their problems matter. My wife Olivia sells million-dollar houses to other rich people who think square footage equals happiness. Our 13-year-old daughter Mia is the only one in this family who still believes in honesty, which probably explains why she spends most of her time in her room. But let me back up, because this story doesn't start with hotel room keys. It starts with Eric Voss, hedge fund prince and owner of the most obnoxious Porsche in our zip code. Eric became Olivia's client 6 months ago when he decided he needed a bigger place to entertain. What I didn't know then was that my wife had volunteered to be part of the entertainment package. The signs were all there, of course. Late-night client calls that required her to leave the house. New lingerie that never made an appearance in our bedroom. A sudden interest in yoga classes that seemed to involve a lot of post-workout showers and mysterious good moods. I'm not stupid. I build computer networks for a living, which means I understand how systems connect and communicate. I just chose to ignore the obvious connections in my own home network. "Dad, Mom's acting weird again," Mia said one Tuesday evening, finding me in my home office debugging code for a client's security system. She perched on the edge of my desk, her dark hair falling across her face in that way that reminded me why I'd fallen in love with Olivia 15 years ago. Back when Olivia still looked at me like I mattered. "Weird how?" I asked, though I suspected I knew the answer. "She's humming. Mom never hums. And she bought new perfume, the expensive kind from that store at the mall where everything costs more than my allowance. Smart kid. Too smart, maybe. Maybe she's just happy about a big sale." Mia gave me the look that 13-year-olds perfect around age 12, the one that says adults are idiots and she's just being polite by not pointing it out. "Dad, she sold the Patterson house 3 weeks ago. This is different. That conversation happened on a Tuesday. By Thursday, I'd installed new security software on our home network, the kind that logs every device connection and tracks data usage. By Friday, I knew my wife was spending 2 hours every afternoon on video calls with someone who wasn't listed in her work contacts. By Saturday, I'd traced the calls to Eric Voss's personal cell phone. Still, I might have convinced myself it was just business, might have kept playing the oblivious husband role that apparently fit me so well. But then came the neighborhood barbecue at the Hendersons' house, and everything changed. I was manning the grill, because that's what suburban husbands do. We flip burgers and pretend we're still relevant while our wives network and our kids ignore us. Olivia was across the patio, laughing with her usual crew: Cass Morrison, who treats gossip like an Olympic sport, and Tasha Williams, who enables everyone's bad decisions with the enthusiasm of a cheerleader on cocaine. "Alex is such a saint," I heard Cass say, her voice carrying that particular tone women use when they're about to say something that proves you're anything but. I mean, if my husband was as clueless as he is, I'd feel terrible about what I was doing. Tasha giggled. "Olivia says he actually asked if she wanted to go to marriage counseling. Can you imagine? Like talking about feelings is going to fix anything when Eric looks like that and drives what he drives." "Did you see them at the Marriott last week?" Cass continued. "I was there for my sister's baby shower, and they were in the lobby bar. Very hands-on, if you know what I mean. She was wearing that red dress, the one she told Alex she returned because it was too expensive." The burger I was flipping fell through the grill grates. I watched it disappear into the flames below, thinking that was probably a metaphor for something important. "The poor man," Tasha said. "He has no idea she's planning to ask for a divorce after the Jameson house closes. She wants the commission first. It's a $2 million listing." "Smart woman," Cass replied. "Eric's already looking at rings." showed me a picture on his phone. Must have cost more than Alex makes in 6 months. I turned off the grill and walked inside, past the crowd of neighbors who probably all knew what I'd just learned. In the Hendersons' bathroom, I stared at myself in the mirror and tried to recognize the man looking back. 40 years old, thinning hair, soft around the middle, wearing a polo shirt that screamed suburban dad who gave up. The man in the mirror looked like exactly the kind of guy whose wife would trade up for a hedge fund prince with a Porsche. But looks can be deceiving, because while I might look like a pushover, I've spent 20 years in IT security, which means I know how to find information people don't want found. And I know how to use that information in ways that would make my corporate clients very nervous. When we got home that night, Olivia went straight to her office to catch up on paperwork. I went to mine and started planning. Because if my wife thought she could humiliate me in front of the entire neighborhood while planning her exit strategy, she was about to learn that the quiet IT guy she'd been taking for granted had some surprises of his own. The hotel room key card was just confirmation of what I already knew. But it was also something else. It was evidence. And in my world, evidence is power. I held the key card up to the light from my desk lamp, noting the Marriott logo and the room number written in Olivia's handwriting, 412. Below that, in different handwriting, masculine, confident, were the words, "Next time, wear the tie." I looked at my tie rack, hanging on the back of my office door. 15 ties, mostly gifts from Christmases past, representing 15 years of trying to be the husband Olivia wanted. Apparently, I'd been wearing them for the wrong person. Time to change that. The beautiful thing about living in a smart home is that everything is connected, monitored, and logged. When you're married to someone who thinks technology is magic and IT guys are wizards, you have certain advantages. Olivia never questioned why our house had so many Alexa devices, or why I'd insisted on the premium security system with interior cameras for when we're traveling. She definitely never asked why I needed administrative access to her phone for family safety purposes. 3 days after the barbecue revelation, I had everything I needed. Call logs showing 2-hour conversations with Eric every Tuesday and Thursday. Calendar entries for yoga classes that happened to coincide with Eric's lunch breaks. Credit card charges at Victoria's Secret that corresponded with lingerie I'd never seen. And most damning of all, audio recordings from our bedroom Alexa device that captured Olivia's side of phone conversations that would make a sailor blush. "God, Eric, I can't wait to get out of here," she'd said just last Tuesday, thinking I was at a client meeting. "Alex is so pathetic lately. He actually suggested we take a weekend trip to Vermont." Vermont? Like some quaint bed and breakfast is going to fix what's wrong with us. What's wrong with us, apparently, was that I wasn't a millionaire with abs and a German sports car. Good to know. But the real prize came Thursday morning when Olivia left her laptop open while she showered. One quick USB drive insertion later, and I had copies of email exchanges that read like a romance novel written by someone with a business degree and no shame. "My husband is working late again tonight," one email read. "Something about server maintenance. Perfect timing. I'll meet you at our usual spot at 8. Wear the blue tie I bought you. I want to untie it with my teeth. The blue tie." Of course. I'd wondered why she'd suddenly started buying Eric gifts from both of us for his birthday and Christmas. Apparently, I'd been funding my own cuckolding. There's probably a tax deduction for that. Armed with enough evidence to end 3 marriages and a political career, I began phase 1 of what I was already thinking of as Operation Upgrade. If Olivia thought Eric was an upgrade from me, I was going to show both of them what a real upgrade looked like. It started small. Our smart home system had a feature that let me control audio throughout the house from my phone. So when Olivia brought Eric over for what she told me was a quick property consultation, while I was supposedly at work, I treated them to a surprise soundtrack. I was actually parked 2 blocks away, watching the show through our security cameras on my tablet. They'd made it to the living room couch when I activated the sound system and filled the house with our wedding song, "At Last" by Etta James. The same song we danced to at our reception when Olivia promised to love and honor me until death do us part. The effect was immediate and hilarious. Eric jumped off the couch like it was on fire, looking around wildly for the source of the music. Olivia scrambled to find the remote, her face cycling through confusion, embarrassment, and finally, terror as she realized what was happening. "Turn it off!" Eric shouted over Etta James's voice, but Olivia was frantically pressing buttons on 3 different remotes, none of which controlled the whole house audio system. Only my phone could do that. I let the song play through to the end, then switched to the next track in my carefully curated playlist, Before He Cheats by Carrie Underwood. By the time Carrie started singing about keyed cars and slashed tires, Eric was heading for the door. "This is insane," he said, grabbing his jacket. "Your husband is obviously some kind of psycho." "He's not psycho," Olivia protested, still clicking remotes. "He's just technically gifted." "Well, your technically gifted husband can go gift himself somewhere else. Call me when you've handled this." The door slammed and suddenly the house was quiet. I'd stopped the music remotely, and now I watched through the cameras as my wife stood alone in our living room, slowly realizing that her secret wasn't secret anymore. My phone buzzed with a text from her. "We need to talk." I texted back, "About what?" "Your yoga classes?" 3 dots appeared and disappeared several times before her response came. "I'm sorry." "For which part?" "The lying, the cheating, or getting caught?" This time, the dots stayed for a full minute before she wrote, "All of it." I drove home to find Olivia sitting at our kitchen table, still in the dress she'd worn for her property consultation. It was red, the same dress Cass had mentioned seeing her wear at the Marriott, the one she'd told me she returned. "How long have you known?" she asked without looking up. "Long enough?" I sat across from her, noting how she couldn't meet my eyes. "The question is, how long has it been going on?" "Alex, please." "It's not what you think." I pulled out my phone and played one of her recorded conversations with Eric, the one where she described in vivid detail what she wanted to do to him in the back seat of his Porsche. Her face went white as her own voice filled the kitchen. "Okay," she said when I stopped the recording. "It's exactly what you think." 6 months, I said. It wasn't a question. She nodded. "The whole time, you've been planning to divorce me after the Jameson sale closes." Another nod, smaller this time. "And Eric's been looking at engagement rings." This time, she looked up, surprised. "How did you—" "I know everything, Olivia. The hotel rooms, the lingerie, the fake yoga classes. I know about the credit card you opened without telling me, and I know about the apartment you've been looking at with Eric. I even know about the lies you've been telling Mia about why Mommy's been so happy lately." The last part was a bluff, but her expression told me I'd hit close to the mark. "What do you want?" she asked finally. It was a fair question. What did I want? A week ago, I would have said I wanted my wife back, my marriage fixed, my family whole. But sitting across from this woman who'd spent 6 months systematically dismantling our life while pretending everything was fine, I realized what I actually wanted was much simpler. I wanted them to pay. "I want you to call Eric," I said. "Alex, call him. Tell him the coast is clear and he should come back. Tell him you figured out the music thing and it won't happen again." "Why?" I smiled, and something in that smile made her lean back in her chair. "Because, sweetheart, we're just getting started, and I want him to have a front row seat for what comes next." She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her trying to reconcile this version of her husband with the pushover she'd been married to for 15 years. Finally, she picked up her phone. "Eric? It's me. Yes, everything's fine now. Can you come back? We need to finish our consultation." While we waited for Eric to return, I excused myself to the garage, where I'd been preparing a few surprises. Phase 1 had been about letting them know I knew. Phase 2 was about showing them what happened when you underestimated the quiet guy in IT. Eric's Porsche pulled into our driveway 18 minutes later. I watched from the kitchen window as he sat in the car for a moment, probably trying to decide if this was worth the risk. Apparently, my wife's charms won out, because he eventually got out and walked to our front door. I answered it before he could knock. "Eric! Good to see you, buddy. Come on in. I understand you and Olivia have some business to discuss." He looked at me like I was a bomb that might go off at any moment. "Alex, hi. Yes, just some property stuff." Property stuff. Right. I stepped aside to let him in, noting how he stayed as far from me as possible while still being polite. "Can I get you something to drink? Coffee, water, a blue tie?" The color drained from his face. Olivia, watching from the kitchen doorway, looked like she might throw up. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," Eric started. "Oh, I understand perfectly," I said, pulling out my phone. "In fact, let me show you just how well I understand." I opened the photo gallery and scrolled to the screenshots I'd taken of Olivia's emails. Eric's face went from pale to green as I read his own words back to him. "I can't wait to have you all to myself," I read in a theatrical voice. "Once you're free of that loser husband, we can stop sneaking around like teenagers." "That's beautiful, Eric, really. Shakespearean, almost. Look, man, I can explain." "Oh, you don't need to explain anything. It's all very clear. You want my wife, my house, and apparently my life. The question is, what are you willing to pay for it?" Eric's confusion was genuine. "Pay?" I smiled again, the same smile that had made Olivia nervous. "Everything has a price, Eric. You've been getting the girlfriend experience for free, but the wife experience? That's going to cost you." Before he could ask what I meant, his phone buzzed with a text message. Then another. Then a third. "You might want to check those," I suggested. With shaking hands, he pulled out his phone. His face went from green to gray as he read. "What did you do?" he whispered. "Just shared some of your romantic correspondence with a few mutual acquaintances. Your business partner seemed particularly interested in the email where you mentioned using client funds for hotel rooms. And your ex-wife's lawyer was fascinated by the part where you discussed hiding assets during your divorce. You can't do this. I already did it. But don't worry, I'm sure it's all just a big misunderstanding. I mean, you're a hedge fund manager. You would never actually use client money for personal expenses, right? And you certainly wouldn't lie about your assets during divorce proceedings. That would be illegal." Eric looked at Olivia, then back at me. "What do you want?" "I want you to leave my house, leave my wife alone, and disappear from my life. And I want you to do it right now, before I decide to share the video files with the SEC." "What video files?" I didn't answer. I didn't have any video files, but Eric didn't know that. Sometimes the best weapon is the one your enemy imagines. He left without another word, his Porsche tires squealing as he backed out of our driveway. Through the window, I watched him speed down our quiet suburban street like the devil was chasing him. Maybe the devil was. Olivia stood in our kitchen, staring at me like I was a stranger. "Who are you?" she asked. "I'm your husband," I said. "The one you promised to love and honor. Remember?" But as I walked upstairs to check on Mia, I knew the real answer was simpler. I was the man Olivia had created when she decided to betray everything we'd built together. And that man was just getting started. You know what they don't tell you about revenge? It's addictive. That rush you get when you see the fear in someone's eyes, when they realize the person they've been screwing over isn't as helpless as they thought. It's better than coffee, better than sex, better than anything I'd felt in years. Eric stayed away for exactly 4 days. I know because I'd set up monitoring on Olivia's phone that tracked her location, call logs, and text messages. The beauty of being married to someone who thinks password 123 is secure is that you have unlimited access to their digital life. On day 5, they met at a Starbucks in the next town over. I know because I was there, sitting 3 tables away with a laptop and noise-canceling headphones, looking like just another remote worker getting his caffeine fix. "He's lost his mind," Eric was saying when I tuned into their conversation. I'd planted a small listening device in Olivia's purse during one of her showers, a little gift from my corporate security toolkit. "He's not crazy," Olivia replied. "He's angry." There's a difference. Angry people don't hack into business emails and threaten SEC investigations. Alex does. You don't understand him like I do. He's been the quiet, nice guy for so long that everyone forgets what he actually does for a living. He builds security systems for Fortune 500 companies. He knows how to find information, and he knows how to use it. There was a long pause. I imagined Eric processing this, realizing that his affair partner's husband wasn't the harmless nerd he'd assumed. "So, what do we do?" Eric asked finally. "We wait. Let him cool down. Maybe he'll be reasonable." I almost laughed out loud. Reasonable. Like there was a reasonable response to finding out your wife had been planning to divorce you while screwing another man in hotel rooms you were indirectly paying for through joint credit cards. That evening, I implemented Phase 3 of Operation Upgrade. If they thought I was going to cool down and be reasonable, they were about to learn otherwise. It started with Eric's car. His precious Porsche 911, midnight black with custom leather interior and more technology than most people's homes. He'd parked it at his office building downtown, in his reserved spot that probably cost more per month than some people's rent. I didn't damage it. That would have been illegal. And despite what Eric might think, I'm not actually crazy. Instead, I did something much more creative. Using a frequency scanner and about 30 minutes of research, I'd figured out how to connect to his car's Bluetooth system. Most people don't realize that modern cars are basically computers on wheels, and computers can be hacked if you know what you're doing. So when Eric got in his car after work, instead of his usual satellite radio, he was treated to a very special playlist. It started with Your Cheatin' Heart by Hank Williams and moved through a carefully curated selection of songs about infidelity, betrayal, and karma. But the real masterpiece was the custom message I'd programmed to display on his dashboard screen. Homewrecker Express, next stop, consequences. I wasn't there to see his reaction, but I didn't need to be. The panicked phone call to Olivia 20 minutes later, which I intercepted through her phone, told me everything I needed to know. "He's in my car!" Eric shouted. "Your psycho husband is somehow in my car." "That's impossible," Olivia said, but her voice was uncertain. "The radio won't turn off, and there's a message on my screen calling me a homewrecker. How is that impossible?" "I don't know. Maybe it's a coincidence?" "A coincidence?" "The radio is playing a song called Before He Cheats, and the GPS keeps trying to route me to marriage counseling offices. That's not a coincidence. That's psychological warfare." He was right, of course. It was psychological warfare, and I was just getting started. The next morning, I implemented Phase 4. If Eric thought having his car hacked was bad, he was going to love what happened at the country club. Olivia had mentioned that Eric was playing in the club's annual golf tournament, a big social event where Briarwood's elite gathered to network and show off. It was exactly the kind of place where reputation mattered more than money and where public embarrassment could follow you for years. I'd never been much of a golfer, but I'd done IT work for the country club a few years back, which meant I still had administrative access to their systems. Amazing how often people forget to revoke access when a contract ends. The tournament started at 8 a.m. By 8:30, every electronic display in the clubhouse was showing the same message. "Congratulations to Eric Voss, our newest member of the Adulterers Club. Ask him about his favorite hotel rooms." The message rotated with photos I'd pulled from Eric's social media, him at various restaurants and locations around town, all places I'd confirmed he'd taken my wife through credit card records and her location data. But the real genius was in the details. I'd programmed the system to send personalized emails to every club member, thanking them for their understanding and support during Eric's transition from bachelor to homewrecker. The emails included helpful tips like, if you're married, you might want to keep your wives away from Eric's property consultations. And remember, affairs are like golf. It's all about finding the right holes. I was having coffee at a diner across the street when Eric came running out of the clubhouse, his golf outfit half on and his face the color of a fire truck. He was followed by several other men who were either laughing or looking disgusted, hard to tell from a distance. His phone was already ringing when he reached his car. Probably Olivia, wondering why her phone was suddenly buzzing with messages from every society wife in Briarwood. That afternoon, I received a visit from Detective Martinez, a guy I'd known casually through Mia's school events. His daughter was in her class, and we'd chatted at a few parent functions. "Alex," he said when I opened the door. "Got a minute?" "Sure, Mike." "What's up?" He looked uncomfortable. "I got a complaint today. Eric Voss claims you've been harassing him, hacking his car, vandalizing the country club's computer system, says you've been threatening him." I invited him in and offered coffee, playing the role of confused suburban dad. "Hacking his car? Mike, I fix computers for insurance companies. I wouldn't know how to hack a car if my life depended on it." "What about the country club? What about it?" "Their system was compromised this morning. Someone posted embarrassing messages about Eric throughout the building." I looked genuinely puzzled. "That's terrible. Identity theft is a real problem these days. Have they checked their security logs? Maybe someone stole Eric's information and is using it to embarrass him. You know how these hackers work. They find personal information online and use it to cause trouble." Martinez studied my face. "Eric seems to think you're involved." "Mike, I've been married to Olivia for 15 years. If I was the type of guy who went around hacking cars and vandalizing country clubs, don't you think she would have mentioned it by now?" He couldn't argue with that logic. After a few more questions that I answered with perfect suburban dad innocence, he left with a warning to stay away from Eric Voss and let the lawyers handle whatever's going on between us. I promised I would, and I meant it. I was going to stay far away from Eric Voss. That didn't mean I was going to stop destroying his life from a distance. That evening, Olivia confronted me in my office. "This has to stop," she said. I looked up from my computer, where I was working on a legitimate client project. "What has to stop?" "You know what? The car thing, the country club, whatever else you're planning. I have no idea what you're talking about. Alex, please. I know you're angry, and you have every right to be. But this isn't solving anything." I leaned back in my chair and really looked at her. She was still beautiful at 37, still the woman I'd fallen in love with in college, but something had changed in her eyes over the years, something that made her look at me like I was a problem to be managed rather than a husband to be loved. "You're right," I said finally. "This isn't solving anything." Relief flooded her face. "So you'll stop?" "I'll stop when you and Eric publicly apologize for what you've done to our family. I'll stop when you move out and file for divorce honestly, without trying to frame me as an abusive husband or hide assets. And I'll stop when Eric pays back every penny he cost me in hotel rooms, dinners, and gifts that came out of our joint accounts." Her relief disappeared. "That's not reasonable." "Neither is adultery, but that didn't stop you." She started to say something else, but I held up my hand. "Olivia, you had 6 months to be reasonable. 6 months to talk to me about problems in our marriage, to suggest counseling, to ask for a separation. Instead, you chose to lie, cheat, and plan my humiliation. Now you want me to be reasonable? What do you want from me? I want you to experience consequences, real consequences, the kind that make you think twice before you destroy someone's life for your own entertainment." She left without another word, but I could hear her on the phone in the next room, her voice urgent and scared. Probably calling Eric, probably planning their next move. Let them plan. I had moves they hadn't even imagined yet, because the truth was, I was just getting warmed up. The car hacking and country club embarrassment were just appetizers. The main course was still coming, and it was going to be a feast they'd never forget. The problem with having a cheating wife is that everyone knows before you do, and once you know, everyone expects you to handle it with dignity and grace. Suburban social rules dictate that you should quietly divorce, split the assets 50-50, and maintain a cordial relationship for the sake of the children. But suburban social rules are written by people who've never had their entire life systematically dismantled by someone they trusted. They're written by people who think betrayal is something that happens to other people, in other neighborhoods, to other families. I was about to teach Briarwood a new set of rules. It started with Mia. My daughter had been quiet for days, spending even more time in her room than usual. When she finally came to talk to me, it was with the kind of careful composure that breaks your heart because you realize your kid is trying to be the adult in a situation no child should have to navigate. "Dad, are you and Mom getting divorced?" We were in the kitchen, making her lunch for school. Normal domestic routine in the middle of complete chaos, another suburban specialty. "I don't know, sweetheart. Maybe. Would that upset you?" She considered this with the seriousness of a Supreme Court justice. "I don't think you and Mom make each other happy anymore." "What makes you say that?" "She's always on her phone and you're always angry. And she keeps talking to that man with the fancy car. Eric." Of course, Mia had noticed Eric. Kids notice everything adults think they're hiding. "How do you feel about that man?" "I don't like him. He talks to me like I'm stupid, and he called our house quaint, like it was a bad thing. Also, he wears too much cologne, out of the mouths of babes. If Mom and I do get divorced, you know it's not your fault, right?" "I know. It's her fault." The matter-of-fact way she said it hit me like a punch to the chest. "Mia." "Dad, I'm 13, not 3. I know what's going on. Mom's been lying to both of us for months. She thinks I don't notice when she comes home with her makeup messed up, or when she gets text messages that make her smile in that gross way adults smile when they think about kissing. I stopped making her sandwich and really looked at my daughter. When had she gotten so grown up? When had she started seeing the world with such clear, unforgiving eyes? "I'm sorry you've had to deal with this," I said. "I'm not sorry. I'm mad. Mom's being stupid, and that man is a jerk, and everyone at school is going to find out because their parents all talk about everything that happens in this stupid neighborhood." She was right about that. Briarwood thrived on gossip, and my little campaign against Eric had definitely given people something to talk about, which gave me an idea for Phase 5. If everyone was going to talk anyway, I might as well give them something worth talking about. That afternoon, I made a few phone calls to parents from Mia's school, people I'd worked with on various committees and fundraisers over the years, casual conversations about weekend plans and upcoming events. But buried in each conversation was a carefully planted seed of information. "Yeah, Olivia's been working a lot lately. New client, you know how it is. Eric Voss, the hedge fund guy. Apparently he needs a lot of personal attention. She's been showing him properties almost every day." "Oh, you saw them at the Marriott?" "Yeah, that's where they meet for their business lunches. Very thorough consultation process, from what I understand." "The country club thing?" "I heard about that. Sounds like someone's playing pranks on Eric. Probably one of his business rivals. You know how competitive those finance guys can be." By Friday, the story had evolved and spread through the Briarwood parent network like a virus. Olivia was having an affair with a client. Eric was being targeted by a mysterious hacker. The country club was investigating a security breach, and everyone had an opinion about what should happen next. The beautiful thing about small-town gossip is that it takes on a life of its own. I didn't need to do anything else. The story was now self-sustaining, growing and changing with each retelling. But I wasn't done yet. Saturday morning, Eric made his first major mistake. He came to our house. I was in the garage, actually working on a legitimate project for once, installing a new workbench. The physical labor felt good after days of psychological warfare. When I heard the Porsche pull into our driveway, I didn't even look up. "Alex!" Eric's voice was tight with anger. "We need to talk." I set down my drill and turned around. Eric stood in my garage doorway, dressed in weekend casual clothes that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. His face was red, his hair was messed up, and he looked like a man who'd reached the end of his patience. "Eric, good to see you, buddy. What brings you by?" "Cut the crap. I know what you've been doing." "What have I been doing?" "The car, the country club, the phone calls to my business partners. You're trying to destroy my life." I picked up a wrench and tested its weight in my hand. Not as a threat, just something to do with my hands while we talked. But Eric took a step back anyway. "Why would I want to destroy your life?" "I barely know you." "Because of Olivia." "What about Olivia?" "You know what about Olivia." I set down the wrench and gave him my full attention. "Eric, I'm going to need you to be more specific. Are you talking about the fact that you've been sleeping with my wife for 6 months? The fact that you've been using my joint credit cards to pay for hotel rooms? The fact that you've been planning to marry her after she divorces me? Which specific thing about Olivia are we discussing?" His face went from red to purple. "She told me you knew." "I know everything. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" "I'm going to marry her." "Are you?" "Yes, as soon as she's free." I laughed. I couldn't help it. The whole situation was so absurd. This man standing in my garage, wearing clothes that cost more than my car, telling me he was going to marry my wife like he was doing me a favor. "Eric, let me explain something to you. Olivia isn't going to marry you." "Yes, she is." "No, she's not. Because by the time I'm done with both of you, you won't have the money to buy her a ring from a gumball machine, and she won't have the reputation to show her face at a church wedding. You can't stop us." "I already am stopping you. Your business partners are asking questions about your client account management. Your ex-wife's lawyer is reviewing your asset disclosure statements. The country club is considering revoking your membership. And every parent in Mia's school knows you're the guy who breaks up families. None of that matters, doesn't it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like it matters a lot. You're here, in my garage, looking like you haven't slept in days, telling me about your marriage plans like you need my permission. If none of it mattered, you'd be at home, planning your future with my wife." Eric stared at me for a long moment, and I could see him trying to figure out his next move. Finally, he pulled out his phone. "I'm calling the police." "Good idea. Detective Martinez is a friend of mine. I'll tell him you stopped by." He dialed, waited, then spoke to whoever answered. "I need to report harassment. Alex Reardon is stalking me, hacking my car, vandalizing property. I want him arrested." There was a pause while he listened to the response. "What do you mean, do I have evidence?" "He's obviously the one doing it." Another pause. "Fine. I'll come to the station." He hung up and glared at me. "This isn't over." "You're right. It's not." After he left, I went inside to find Olivia waiting in the kitchen. She'd obviously been listening to the conversation. "You can't keep doing this," she said. "Doing what?" "Destroying everything. Eric's business, his reputation, our chances of being happy." "Your chances of being happy? What about Mia's chances of being happy? What about my chances? You'll find someone else. You'll move on." The casual cruelty of that statement took my breath away. 15 years of marriage, 13 years of raising a child together, and she thought I'd just find someone else like I was shopping for a new car. "Olivia, do you have any idea what you've done to our family?" "I fell in love with someone else." "It happens. You didn't fall in love. You planned an exit strategy. You opened secret credit cards, you looked at apartments, you told your friends you were going to divorce me for money. That's not falling in love, that's executing a business plan." "Maybe it is. Maybe that's what love is when you're an adult with responsibilities." I stared at her, this woman I'd shared a bed with for 15 years, and realized I was looking at a stranger. The Olivia I'd married would never have talked about love like a business transaction. The Olivia I'd married would never have systematically destroyed her family for a man with a Porsche. "Get out," I said. What? Get out of my house. Pack your things and leave. Go stay with Eric or your sister or a hotel, I don't care, but I want you gone by tonight. You can't kick me out. This is my house too. Actually, I can. The house is in my name only, remember? You insisted on that when we bought it because of your credit issues. And since you've been committing adultery, which is still grounds for divorce in Connecticut, I have legal standing to exclude you from the marital residence. Her face went white. You looked that up. I look everything up. It's what I do. Alex, please, let's be reasonable about this. I tried reasonable. Reasonable got me 6 months of lies and a wife who thinks love is a business transaction. Now we're doing it my way. She left that night, 2 suitcases and a lot of tears that I no longer believed were genuine. Mia helped her pack, not saying much, but clearly choosing sides by staying with me. After Olivia was gone, Mia and I ordered pizza and watched a movie, pretending everything was normal. But when she went to bed, I sat in my office and planned the next phase of Operation Upgrade. Because Eric was right about one thing. This wasn't over. It was just getting started. And tomorrow I was going to show both of them what happened when you underestimated the quiet guy in IT. Living alone with Mia should have been peaceful. No more late-night client calls, no more mysterious good moods, no more walking on eggshells around someone who'd already decided I wasn't worth her time. For the first few days, it almost felt like a vacation from my own life. But peace wasn't part of Olivia's plan. It started with the lawyers. Not divorce lawyers. I was expecting those. It started with a call from Detective Martinez on Tuesday morning, 3 days after Olivia moved out. Alex, I need you to come down to the station. We need to talk. About what? Just come down. Bring a lawyer if you have one. I didn't have a lawyer. In 15 years of marriage, I'd never needed one. But I knew someone who did. My client, Jake Morrison, who ran a small accounting firm and had been through a nasty divorce 2 years earlier. Call David Chen, Jake told me when I explained the situation. He's expensive, but he's good. And Alex? Don't say anything to the cops until he gets there. David Chen turned out to be a thin, intense man in his 40s who dressed like he charged by the hour and spoke like every word was billable time. We met at the police station where Detective Martinez was waiting with another officer I didn't recognize. Mr. Reardon, Martinez said, we've received some serious allegations against you. What kind of allegations? Domestic violence. Your wife filed a restraining order this morning. She claims you've been threatening her, that you forced her to leave the house, and that you've been using your technical skills to stalk and harass her and her friend. I looked at David, who nodded for me to continue. That's not true. She has evidence, photos of bruises on her arms, text messages where you allegedly threatened to destroy her life, audio recordings of you shouting at her. My blood went cold. I never touched Olivia. I never threatened her. And I certainly never shouted at her. Martinez slid a folder across the table. Inside were photos of Olivia with finger-shaped bruises on her upper arms, printouts of text messages from my phone number containing threats I'd never written, and a transcript of an audio recording where someone with my voice was screaming obscenities and threats. That's not me, I said, studying the evidence. I mean, that's my phone number, but I didn't send these texts. And that audio, it doesn't even sound like me. Voice analysis says otherwise, the other officer said. Technology is amazing these days. We can match voice patterns, analyze speech patterns, even detect when someone's trying to disguise their voice. David leaned forward. I'd like to examine this evidence with my own experts. Of course. But in the meantime, Mr. Reardon, you're under arrest for domestic violence and criminal harassment. The next 6 hours were the longest of my life. Booking, fingerprinting, a cell that smelled like disinfectant and desperation. David worked his expensive magic on the outside while I sat inside trying to figure out how Olivia had managed to fabricate evidence that looked so convincing. The answer came to me around hour 4. Eric. Eric worked in finance, which meant he had access to sophisticated technology and people who knew how to use it. Voice synthesis software, photo manipulation, text message spoofing, all available if you had money and connections. But knowing how they'd done it didn't help me prove it. I was released on bail with a restraining order that kept me away from Olivia and Eric, pending a hearing in 2 weeks. David drove me home, where Mia was waiting with my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, who'd agreed to watch her while I was at the station. "Dad, what happened?" Mia asked after Mrs. Patterson left. "Your mother is trying to have me arrested." "For what?" "She says I hurt her, that I threatened her." Mia's face went through a series of expressions: confusion, disbelief, and finally, anger. "That's a lie." "I know it's a lie, but proving it is going to be complicated." "She's doing this because of that man, isn't she?" "Because you embarrassed him." "Smart kid. Too smart." "Probably." "What are we going to do?" "Good question. What were we going to do?" I was facing criminal charges based on fabricated evidence, created by people with more money and fewer scruples than me. The legal system was designed to protect people like Olivia and Eric, not people like me. But the legal system wasn't the only system in play. That night, after Mia went to bed, I did what I do best. I dug into the data. If Eric had the resources to fabricate evidence against me, he'd left digital footprints. Voice synthesis software requires processing power and specialized programs. Photo manipulation leaves metadata traces. Text message spoofing requires specific equipment and technical knowledge. I started with Eric's business. Voss Capital Management had a surprisingly robust IT infrastructure for a small hedge fund, multiple servers, high-end workstations, and a network security setup that screamed, "We have something to hide." It took me 3 days to find a way in. Not hacking. That would have been illegal. But Eric's company used the same IT service provider as one of my legitimate clients, and that provider had some security gaps in their remote access protocols. What I found was better than I'd hoped for. Eric hadn't just fabricated evidence against me. He'd been running a sophisticated financial fraud scheme, using client investments to fund his lifestyle while reporting fake returns. The hotel rooms, the expensive dinners, the Porsche, all paid for with other people's money. But the real prize was in his personal files. Email exchanges with a company called Digital Solutions that specialized in reputation management and evidence creation. Invoices for voice synthesis services and photographic enhancement. And most damning of all, a detailed plan for framing me that included timelines, evidence creation schedules, and contingency plans. Phase 1. Create domestic violence narrative, one document read. Use synthesized audio and staged photographs to establish pattern of abuse. Timeline. Complete by Tuesday for Wednesday filing. Phase 2. Criminal harassment charges. Use spoofed text messages and fabricated stalking evidence. Timeline. File simultaneously with restraining order for maximum impact. Phase 3. Emergency custody hearing. Position Olivia as protective mother, fleeing abusive husband. Seek full custody and exclusive use of marital assets. It was all there, a complete blueprint for destroying my life, written in corporate language like it was just another business project. But Eric had made one critical mistake. He'd documented everything, every payment, every communication, every step of the plan. And now, I had copies of all of it. I called David Chen at 6 a.m. "I have evidence," I said when he answered. "Evidence that proves Olivia and Eric fabricated everything." "What kind of evidence?" "The kind that's going to put Eric in federal prison and get Olivia charged with perjury." 2 hours later, David was at my house reviewing the files I'd downloaded from Eric's servers. His expression went from skeptical to amazed to professionally outraged. "This is incredible," he said. "They documented everything. It's like they wanted to get caught." "Arrogance," I said. "Eric thinks he's smarter than everyone else. and Olivia thinks her tears and bruises make her untouchable. They never considered the possibility that someone might fight back. How did you get this information? I explained about the IT service provider and the security gaps, carefully staying within legal boundaries. David nodded, making notes. This changes everything, he said. We need to get this to the prosecutor immediately. Not yet. Alex, this proves your innocence. Why would you want to wait? I looked out the window at our quiet suburban street, thinking about the past week. The arrest, the humiliation, the fear in Mia's eyes when she realized her mother was trying to destroy her father. Because I want them to think they've won. I want them to get comfortable, maybe make more mistakes. And I want to gather a little more evidence. What kind of evidence? I smiled, the same smile that had been making people nervous for weeks. The kind that's going to make this the most memorable divorce in Briarwood history. David left with copies of everything, promising to prepare our legal strategy while I worked on what he diplomatically called additional evidence gathering. That afternoon, I implemented the final phase of Operation Upgrade. If Eric and Olivia wanted to play with fabricated evidence and criminal charges, I was going to show them what real evidence looked like. And this time, everyone in Briarwood was going to have a front row seat. The thing about small towns is that everyone shows up for the big events. Graduations, funerals, town meetings, and apparently, public humiliations that destroy reputations and end careers. By Thursday morning, it seemed like half of Briarwood knew something big was about to happen, even if they didn't know exactly what. I'd spent 3 days preparing for what I was privately calling the Eric and Olivia show. Every detail planned, every contingency covered, every possible outcome mapped out like a military operation. Because that's what this was, war. And I intended to win. The setting was perfect. The Briarwood Community Center, where the monthly town meeting was being held. Normally, these meetings drew maybe 30 people, mostly retirees with nothing better to do, and parents complaining about school budgets. But word had gotten out that something interesting was going to happen, and the parking lot was packed. I arrived early, carrying a laptop bag and wearing my best suit, the one I'd worn to our wedding 15 years ago. It still fit, which felt like a small victory in itself. Olivia was already there, sitting in the front row with Eric and her lawyer, a sharp-looking woman in an expensive suit who kept checking her phone. Olivia looked perfect, as always. Carefully applied makeup covering what I now knew were self-inflicted bruises, designer clothes that screamed victim of domestic violence who somehow still has access to unlimited funds, and an expression of brave vulnerability that would have won her an Academy Award. Eric sat beside her like a protective boyfriend, one hand on her shoulder, the other scrolling through his phone. He was dressed down from his usual hedge fund prince attire, probably trying to look more sympathetic and less like the kind of man who steals other people's wives. They didn't see me come in. I took a seat in the back, opened my laptop, and waited. The meeting started with the usual small-town bureaucracy. Budget reports, permit approvals, complaints about snow removal. I let it run for about 20 minutes, long enough for everyone to get settled and start getting bored. Then I stood up. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to address the community about a matter of public safety. Mayor Richardson, a decent man who'd known me for years through various school committees, nodded. Of course, Alex. You have 5 minutes. I walked to the front of the room, setting up my laptop and connecting it to the community center's projection system. Olivia and Eric were staring at me now, confusion and growing alarm on their faces. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, my name is Alex Reardon. Some of you know me as the guy who fixes your computers when they break down. Others know me as the husband of Olivia Reardon, who sells real estate in our community. A murmur went through the crowd. Everyone knew about our marital problems by now. Gossip traveled fast in Briarwood. What you might not know is that my wife and her boyfriend, Eric Voss, have been running a sophisticated fraud scheme that affects everyone in this room. Objection! Olivia's lawyer stood up. This is not a legal proceeding. Mr. Reardon cannot— Sit down, Mayor Richardson said firmly. This is a public forum. Mr. Reardon has the floor. I clicked to my first slide, a photo of Eric and Olivia at the Marriott, taken from the hotel's security camera. I'd obtained it through a contact who worked in hotel security, completely legal, since it was a public area. This is my wife and Eric Voss at their regular Tuesday afternoon meeting. Not a business meeting, as they've claimed, but part of a 6-month affair that they've been funding with money stolen from Eric's investment clients. The room erupted. People were turning to stare at Olivia and Eric, whispering, pointing. Olivia had gone pale under her makeup, and Eric was frantically typing on his phone. I clicked to the next slide, financial records showing transfers from client accounts to personal expenses. Eric Voss runs Voss Capital Management, where he manages retirement accounts and investment portfolios for dozens of families in our community. What his clients don't know is that he's been using their money to fund his lifestyle. Hotel rooms, expensive dinners, gifts for my wife, all paid for with money that belongs to hard-working families. More murmurs, louder now. I recognized several faces in the crowd, people who'd mentioned having investments with Eric, people who trusted him with their retirement savings. But that's not the worst part, I continued, clicking to the next slide. When I discovered the affair and started asking questions, Eric and Olivia decided to destroy me using fabricated evidence. The slide showed the invoice from Digital Solutions for voice synthesis services and photographic enhancement. I read it, aloud, explaining how they'd created fake audio recordings and staged photographs to frame me for domestic violence. They filed false police reports, obtained a restraining order based on manufactured evidence, and planned to use these lies to steal my daughter and my home. The room was completely silent now. Even the mayor was staring at the screen, his mouth slightly open. I clicked through more slides, email exchanges between Eric and the evidence fabrication company, detailed plans for framing me, financial records showing how they'd paid for it all with stolen client money. Eric Voss is not just an adulterer, I said, my voice carrying clearly through the silent room. He's a thief who's been stealing from families in this community for months. And my wife is not a victim of domestic violence, she's his accomplice in fraud and perjury. Eric finally stood up, his face red with rage. This is insane. You can't prove any of this. I smiled and clicked to my final slide, a video file. Actually, I can. The video started playing on the big screen. It was security footage from Eric's office, showing him and Olivia meeting with representatives from Digital Solutions, discussing the plan to frame me. The audio was crystal clear, Eric's voice explaining exactly how they wanted the fake evidence created, Olivia adding details about my daily routine to make the fabricated stalking charges more believable. The timestamp shows this meeting took place 2 days before they filed the police report against me, I explained. 2 days before Olivia claimed I'd been abusing her for weeks. The room exploded. People were shouting, standing up, pointing at Eric and Olivia. Several people I recognized as Eric's clients were demanding answers. Someone was calling the police. But I wasn't done yet. There's one more thing, I said, raising my voice over the chaos. Eric, you might want to check your phone. You should have received some interesting messages about 10 minutes ago. Eric looked at his phone, and his face went from red to gray. While I'd been giving my presentation, automated systems I'd set up were sending copies of all the evidence to every regulatory agency that mattered: the SEC, the FBI's Financial Crimes Division, the Connecticut Attorney General's Office, and the State Bar Association. Ladies and gentlemen, I concluded, I want you to know that I've turned over all of this evidence to the appropriate authorities. Eric Voss will be facing federal charges for investment fraud and evidence tampering. My wife will be charged with perjury and conspiracy, and I wanted all of you to know the truth before you read about it in the newspapers. I closed my laptop and started packing up. The room was in complete chaos now, people shouting questions, reporters. Apparently, someone had tipped off the local media, and the sound of sirens in the distance. Olivia was crying, real tears this time, not the carefully manufactured ones she'd been using in court. Eric was on his phone, probably calling his own lawyer, but his hands were shaking so badly he could barely dial. As I walked toward the exit, Detective Martinez appeared at my elbow. "Alex," he said quietly, "we need to talk. I figured you might. The restraining order is going to be lifted. The charges against you are being dropped. And we're going to need you to come in and give a formal statement about all this." Of course. I looked back at Olivia one last time. She was staring at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Not anger, not fear, but something like recognition. Like she was finally seeing me clearly for the first time in years. "Why?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the chaos. "Because you forgot who you were married to," I said. "You saw a quiet guy who fixed computers and assumed I was harmless. But I build security systems for a living, Olivia. I know how to find the truth, and I know how to make sure everyone sees it." I walked out of the community center into the bright afternoon sun. My phone was already ringing. Reporters, lawyers, probably some of Eric's panicked clients. But I ignored it all. Mia was waiting for me at home, having watched the whole thing on the community center's live stream. "Dad," she said when I walked in, "that was amazing. It was necessary. What happens now?" I looked around our house, our real house, the one Olivia had tried to steal with lies and fabricated evidence. It felt different now, cleaner somehow, like a weight had been lifted. "Now we move on," I said. "Your mother made her choices, and Eric made his. They're going to have to live with the consequences. Are you sorry? About any of it?" I thought about that for a moment. Was I sorry that my marriage was over? Yes. Was I sorry that Mia had to see her mother revealed as a liar and a fraud? Absolutely. But was I sorry that I'd fought back, that I'd refused to let them destroy me without consequences? "No," I said finally. "I'm not sorry." 6 months later, Eric was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison for investment fraud and evidence tampering. Olivia pleaded guilty to perjury and conspiracy, receiving 2 years probation and a permanent ban from working in real estate. The divorce was finalized with me getting full custody of Mia and keeping the house. But the real victory wasn't legal or financial. It was simpler than that. I'd been underestimated, betrayed, and nearly destroyed by people who thought they were smarter and more powerful than me. They'd forgotten that the quiet guy in IT, the one who fixes everyone's problems and never complains, might just know how to fix his own problems too. And when push came to shove, I'd shown them exactly what that looked like.